Firstly, why did you do Nemesis? It seems such a negative program for everybody involved.
Well, I think it's hard not to be involved in it, but the premise of it is always a problem because the premise is that is all about the personal, struggles, and of course there is a lot more going on in 9 years of government than that. But it obviously, yeah. I mean, I think if you've held high office like I have, I think you have an obligation to give an account of yourself.
Can we just go through and see if you've still got the same attitude towards of bias at News Corp and the ABC? That because you were very critical on a number of occasions. News Corp first. What's your feeling about News Corp?
Well, I mean, over my time being involved in the media, which is, now about 50 years, I think News Corp has gone from being, set of newspapers and, other platforms which generally lent to the right more than the left in political terms, but which nonetheless, reported the news straight up, by and large, given the limitations of the tabloid format and all of that stuff. I think they've gone from that to becoming now propaganda. So I mean, you couldn't call, say, Fox News, particularly in the United States, or Sky News in Australia, particularly after dark, as being news in a conventional sense. It is propaganda, it is opinionated, it is driving an agenda.
What about the Australian?
Well, I think the Australian is a good example of what I'm talking about. I think the Australian has gone from being a conventional, and I think by and large a high quality newspaper, to one that is now very partisan, very clearly pushing agendas, and highly opinionated, and propaganda.
I just wonder if it's not a matter of catering to its audience. I'm talking about the Australian, not Fox or
yeah. No. I think you're right, but you see,
well, the reader has an obligation then to balance what the Australian does. So I don't see the Australian as so much right wing as pro capital. It's got right wing writers, Gerard Henderson, Janet Albrechtsen, and so on, but it does cover both sides of a story to an extent, in the same way that the Guardian does, but from a different slant. And the same.
I think the Guardian. I think the difference with the Guardian, I'd have to say, is the Guardian is much more careful about getting the facts straight. I think the Guardian is a centre. I mean, that was one of the reasons I was, keen to help get the Guardian started in Australia and encourage the Guardian to set up here. It's 10 years ago now. It doesn't make things up. It checks facts. When it gets facts wrong, it corrects them, apologizes. It's and I think they've got in Australia, in the Australian Guardian, which has been hugely successful, they've got a very fastidious editor in Lenore Taylor.
I do like the New York Times when they say this has been corroborated independently by 5 people. While it's unverified, we've spoken to 5 people who were there or something like that. I do like that level of transparency.
Well, I think it's very important to get your facts straight. And I mean, one of the problems with modern journalism is the immediacy of it. When I used to write for the Bulletin, the deadline for most of the magazine, vast bulk of the magazine, was Friday for hitting the streets the following Wednesday.
And the skill has changed too, to go with that. The skill of a senior journalist now is to be able to quickly distill information and turn it into something that's accessible to his or her audience.
Yeah, sure.
And there are some very good journalists, I think.
But that's the challenge. I mean, but the challenge, Peter, I've been an advocate, and I've been a journalist. I've, been a barrister, a politician, I've worked in business, and in all of my life, I've been one way or another an advocate, or and explaining things. And one of the greatest skills, one of the hardest things, is to take something that is complex and make it simple or understandable without dumbing it down, and to do so in an appealing and engaging way. It's a huge skill, and it's often, and a lot of people don't ever master it, and particularly lawyers, I might add.
So when you were in politics, so I live in Sydney, and I've worked in Canberra on short occasions as a journalist a long time ago, but it's always worried me that there's an unhealthy relationship between the press corps in Canberra and the politicians. Is that accurate, or is that unfair?
Well, they're all in the same building, right? So the building itself is a little bit is quite unhealthy. You can get the politicians are the source of news, and in particular, government is the source of most news. If the government, particularly the Prime Minister's office, is playing favourites, as say Abbott and Morrison used to do with News Corp in particular, and we did not. I mean, I made quite a very clear decision not to do that. It does become it does become quite problematic. And I mean, in a sense, you get journalists not scrutinizing politicians and governments because they rely on them for stories. And equally, you have the problem of politicians sort of ingratiating themselves with the gallery by feeding them information. And sometimes it's very annoying if it's someone leaking stuff out of the cabinet to do so.
Yeah, yep. How do we, have you got any ideas on how to improve journalism, how to increase trust? I mean, I know it says it's obvious to say, look, more transparency, more accuracy, but if it was easy as just saying that, we would have done it.
Well, the part of the problem is that there are business models that are based on essentially not conforming with the principles of accuracy and objectivity. So angatainment, biased, inflammatory sort of material that will get a lot of clicks. So one of the questions that arises is one of responsibility. I mean, I think they should publishers have an obligation to get the facts straight, to be concerned about it?
But how do we actually get to that point?
Well, I think you've got to, that people have got to be held to account. I mean, I think Paul Barry does a good job on the ABC with Media Watch, for example. I think you've got to, that there is a tendency for the media not to comment on each other. I mean, news.
I think the ABC and the Australian are pretty good at beating up each other.
Yeah, no, the Australian's very good at the news is very keen to beat up everyone else, but you don't see Fairfax taking News Corp to task too often, for example. I think if everybody kept each other accountable and honest, that would be a good thing. That's one way.
Yeah. Malcolm Turnbull, thank you very much.
Thank you.